He didn't believe in being challenged. Not in his own space, not in front of his own people. Every room he entered had a structure, and he was always at the top of it. Certainty had never been questioned, until that day. The meeting had already gone on longer than expected. Papers covered the table, laptops open, quiet frustration building as his team tried to solve a problem that should have been simple. A document sat in the center, its contents unfamiliar, its meaning unclear. Calls had been made, messages sent, but nothing had worked fast enough. He leaned back in his chair, watching them struggle, his patience thinning. "This is what we're stuck on," he said, tapping the paper lightly. "A few lines no one can figure out?" No one answered, no one. They avoided his eyes, flipping through pages again as if something new would suddenly appear. But the tension in the room made it obvious. No one had the answer. That silence bothered him more than the problem itself. He glanced around, unimpressed, then let out a small breath that carried just enough frustration to be noticed. "We're wasting time," he said. "There has to be someone who can read this." Still nothing. And then, almost without thinking, his attention shifted beyond the table. It was in the background, moving quietly between tasks, unnoticed by everyone else. The maid. Always there, never part of the conversation. Just another presence people assumed didn't matter, until he pointed at her. He said. The word cut through the room. She paused, looking up slightly surprised but composed. "Yes, sir? Come here." A few people exchanged glances. Cough with a boulder that would hundred the forber on new Sir Colfer. "Come here." A few people exchanged glances. It wasn't usual, it didn't make sense, but no one questioned him. She stepped forward slowly, stopping just short of the table. He picked up the document, holding it out slightly. "Translate this," he said, his tone casual, almost dismissive. "Let's see if you can do better." A quiet ripple of reaction moved through the room. Some were confused, others amused. It felt like a test but not a serious one. She looked at the paper but didn't take it immediately. "Ma forderero for fool." Instead, she asked, "Is it important?" The question caught him off guard, not because of what she asked, but because she asked at all. "Yes," he replied. She nodded once, then accepted the document. For a moment nothing changed. She simply stood there, breathing. The room waited, expecting hesitation, confusion, something that would confirm what everyone already believed. Didn't come. Her expression remained steady, her focus sharp. He watched closely now, his earlier confidence shifting into curiosity. Because this wasn't how it was supposed to go. Seconds turned into something. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, the energy in the room began to change. The laughter faded, the assumptions faded, and for the first time since the meeting began, everyone was paying attention. She didn't rush. It was the first thing they noticed. No nervous glance around the room, no attempt to prove herself quickly. She simply stood there, reading as if the noise, the pressure, weight of every eye on her, didn't exist. At first, a few people exchanged quiet smiles, expecting the moment to end the way they assumed it would. But as seconds passed, those expressions began to fade. Her focus didn't break. Her eyes moved across the page with quiet precision, pausing only where meaning needed to be understood, not guessed. It wasn't the look of someone trying to figure something out. It was the look of someone recognizing it. He leaned forward slightly, watching more closely now. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she finished reading the final line, then gently lowered the paper as if giving the words the time they deserved before speaking. "It's not just a translation," she said calmly. The room stilled. "It's a contract," she continued, her voice steady, measured. "But the wording is layered. Some of the phrases are meant to sound simple, but they carry different meanings depending on how they're interpreted." Few of his team members straightened in their chairs. That wasn't something they had noticed. She turned the page slightly, pointing to a specific section. "This part," she said, "looks like a standard agreement. But the phrasing suggests a condition that only applies if a certain timeline is missed." He frowned, focusing now. "And if it is?" he asked. She met his gaze without hesitation. "Then the control shifts," she said. "Completely." The words landed heavier than expected. A quiet tension spread across the table. "Are you sure?" someone asked from the side, unable to hold back. She nodded once. "Yes." No uncertainty, no hesitation. He stood up slowly, stepping closer, taking the document from her hands. His eyes scanned the section she had pointed out. "Doe." The words were the same ones his team had read over and over again, but now, they felt different. "Explain it," he said. She did, not quickly, not vaguely, clearly. She broke down each phrase, each subtle shift in meaning, each hidden condition that had been overlooked. Voice remained calm, her explanation precise, as if she had done this many times before. And with every sentence, the room grew quieter, because it wasn't just correct. It was deeper than anything they had considered. When she finished, no one spoke. They didn't need to. Realization had already settled in. He looked at her again, really looking this time, not as someone passing through the room, not as someone outside the conversation, but as someone who had just changed it completely. "Do you know this?" he asked. It wasn't suspicion, it was disbelief. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced briefly at the document, then back at him. "I've seen this kind of structure before," she said. Simple words. "I've seen this kind of structure before," she said. Simple words, but they didn't explain everything. And somehow, it made the moment even more unsettling, because now, it wasn't just about what she knew, it was about what no one else had thought to ask, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't the one with the answers. No one moved. The document was still in his hands, but the control he was used to feeling wasn't there anymore. It had shifted, quietly but completely, into something unfamiliar. Her again, this time without the distance he had before. "You've seen this before?" he repeated once. "Yes." "That doesn't explain how you understood it so quickly," he said. His tone wasn't sharp, but it carried something new, curiosity mixed with something he rarely felt in rooms like this. Uncertainty. She didn't react to it. Instead, she stood calmly, as if the weight of the question didn't change anything for her. "I studied languages," she said. The answer was simple, too simple. A few people exchanged glances again, but this time there was no amusement behind it. He narrowed his eyes slightly. "Studied where?" She paused for a moment, then answered, "At a university." The room grew even quiet, because that answer didn't fit the image they had already decided for her. "Then why are you working here?" someone asked before they could stop themselves. It wasn't meant to sound harsh, but it did. Didn't seem offended. "Because life doesn't always follow the same plan," she replied. No explanation, no detail, just truth. He studied her for a second longer, trying to connect the pieces. None of it aligned with what he expected. Not her presence in the room, not her knowledge, not the way she carried herself. And yet, everything she said made sense. He looked back down at the document, then at his team. "You missed this," he said. No anger raised voice, but it landed harder than either. They didn't argue. They couldn't, because they had turned back to her. "And you didn't." It wasn't a question. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Moment, he just stood there, holding the paper. Weight of the situation, settling in a way he hadn't expected. The challenge he had thrown out so casually had come back in a way he didn't control. And he wasn't used to that. "You said my salary is yours," she reminded him quietly. The words cut through the silence. A few people shifted in their seats, unsure of how he would respond. It had been said lightly, almost like a joke, but nothing about this moment felt like one anymore. Looked at her, really looked. There was no arrogance in her tone, no demand. A calm reminder of something he had offered without thinking. For a second, he almost smiled, not out of humor, but out of realization. "Pulper förbid walls föring segis, at spår were falling. Pulper sile, aver korsring." "You actually expect me to do that?" he asked. Met his gaze without hesitation. "No," she said. "I expect you to mean what you say." The answer landed harder than anything before, because it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about something else, something he had built his entire reputation on, his word. And now, for the first time, someone had held him to it in a way he couldn't ignore. The room waited, because whatever he said next would define more than just the moment. The room held its breath. It stood there, the document still in his hand, but the weight of it had changed. It wasn't just about the contract anymore. It was about what had just happened, what had been revealed in front of everyone. Her words echoed in his mind. "I expect you to mean what you say." Built everything on that idea. Deals closed, trust earned, power maintained, all because people believed his word had value. Nathan for Ford earned. And yet, moments ago he had spoken without thinking, assuming it didn't matter. Now it did. Tailed slowly, then placed the document back on the table with care. "You're right," he said. The simplicity of the admission caught everyone off guard. "I don't make offers I don't intend to honor," he continued, his tone steady, controlled, but different from before. Not dismissive, not distant present. A quiet shift moved through the room. He reached for his phone, tapping the screen once before setting it aside again, as if confirming something internally rather than showing it. "My salary isn't a small number," he said. "And I don't give it away lightly." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. "But this," he added, gesturing slightly toward the document, "wasn't luck. It wasn't guessing. You saw what no one else did." He paused, letting that settle. "And that has value." The room remained silent, but the energy had completely changed. There was no trace of the earlier amusement. Was underestimating her anymore. He stepped a little closer, not as a superior addressing someone beneath him, but as someone acknowledging another person's worth. "I'm not going to hand you my salary as a joke," he said honestly, "but I am going to make you an offer that reflects what you've just shown." Now, for the first time, she reacted slightly, not with surprise, just attention. "A position," he continued, "working with us correctly, using the skills you clearly have, or pocketly." A few people at the table shifted, surprised again, but this time for a different reason. He wasn't dismissing the moment. He was recognizing it. "You won't be invisible here," he added. "Not anymore." The words carried more weight than any number could. For a second she said nothing. Then she asked, "Worry?" A simple question, but an important one. He considered it, then answered without hesitation. "Almost missed something, Leo. Power Sue. Habras pervor pering valuable do. Because I almost missed something valuable," he said. "And I don't make that mistake twice." Honesty in his voice was new real. Looked at him for a moment longer, as if measuring the meaning behind the offer. Not the position, not the opportunity, the intention. "Were memberm from per mo want for frimy intention." Then she nodded once. "All right," she said. No excitement, no disbelief, just acceptance. And somehow, that made it even more powerful. He allowed himself a small breath, something close to relief, though he wouldn't have called it that, because in a single moment something had shifted, not just for her, but for him. The room slowly came back to life, conversations restarting, people adjusting to a new reality that hadn't existed before. For him, one thought stayed clear. The person he had overlooked the most had just become the one he couldn't ignore, and that realization would change the way he saw everything from that day forward.